Hello.
Hey everyone.
Hey. Hello,
I
hello
guess
everyone.
I guess we're live. So let's get the show on the road. 45, 50, I don't know how long minutes of awesomeness
Mm.
uh, with me and Aurelien. So welcome everyone.
Hello.
Hey everyone.
Hey.
All
Hello, hello
right.
everyone.
So
I
let's
guess
get
we're
started.
live.
So let's get the show on the road. 45, 50, I don't know how long minutes of awesomeness.
Mm.
And I am getting some feedback
So
from
welcome
my...
everyone. Hello.
Hey everyone.
Hey.
All right.
If you-
So let's get started. So let's get the show on the road. 45, 50, I don't know how long minutes of awesomeness. Here we go. A lot better.
Ah.
Sorry for that. I was getting some feedback from the Event Mobi thing.
Mm.
Let's hope that's the only bug that we're gonna run into. All right. So thank you to our sponsors. Let's start with that. And there's no time to lose because we got a lot of awesome stuff to cover in this session.
Yes, so hello everyone again, without the feedback. So yeah, I'm Aurelien Clere. I'm from France. I'm working at D365 Consulting. I'm associate director, and yeah, saying like we could say global solution architect because I'm not working only on F&O side, but also a lot on Power Platform and customer engagement, machine learning, data, Azure. So yeah, I love to discover the whole panel of Microsoft. So yeah, Microsoft MVP for almost 1 year, I think now. So still a rookie, but yeah, I'm very happy to be there with Antti. And hopefully next year we will be an in-person event, but yeah, glad to be there.
All right, thanks, Aurelien. And my name is Antti. I come from Finland, work with a company called Forward Forever, also a Microsoft BizApps MVP. What I do is that I advise customers on Power Platform and with project operations so that they would struggle less with that. This is actually it's going to be an interesting session. I'm actually doing my first ever co-presentation with someone, and I thought that or why not do it with Aurelien? He's a brilliant guy with lots of knowledge in the platform overall. So not going to give my life story without further ado. Let's kind of jump into the agenda because we do have a lot of stuff to cover during this session. So these are some of the points that we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about intro and history about project operations. What is it? Where does it come from? What's the history? Where is it going? I want to talk about deployment options, some stuff about integration, customization. Then Aurelien is going to mention licensing in a few words. And then we're going to do a demo. I'm going to do the typical Dataverse part, and then Aurelien's going to jump into the fascinating world of F&O. All right, so about history, what is project operations? Where does it come from? Well, in a nutshell, ProjOps is a combination of three different products, you could say. Project Service Automation, which was released in 2016, I believe in the summer of 2016. The new Microsoft Project for the Web. And then from the finance and operations side, what we know as classic PMA, so project management and accounting. And it's basically a combination of all those three products, like best of all worlds, brought into a single offering, into a single product for project management, for sales to delivery to invoicing. So that's sort of in a nutshell what project operations is.
So yeah, we can. That's exactly what Antti said. We project operation now is quite a global architecture. In fact, we could say that now everyone could have an option to see. Okay, I am a project manager, I am a resource manager, I am a team member. So team member, of course, can send expenses, time and expenses. The accounting team can go to finance operation to see the financial part. Someone on the project manager can go to the project operation on Dataverse side. So, every kind of person on the business can really go and check the whole pipeline. I would say the whole pipeline of a project from the quotation to the end of the project with the financial part, accounting, to do a checkup at every timeline of the project. So that's really for me. Yeah, the project operation is really a great enhancement by Microsoft to have a great understanding of the project on every part of the project. Yeah.
All right, so let's then next talk about deployment options. And with project operations, like you're probably already guessing, I mentioned that it's basically a combination of 3 different products that we used to have: PSA, Project for the Web, and then as well PMA from F&O. That means that we have actually a variety of different deployment options. So if we look at the first one, which is called a light deployment. Now, the terminology for the different deployment options is something that you kind of just have to get accustomed to. So in a nutshell, I'd say that the light deployment is similar to what we had with project service automation. So it's essentially Dataverse only. So it means that we only have project operations on CRM, on Dataverse only. So it doesn't have anything to do with F&O. And the thing is, when you buy project operations, you can freely choose any of these deployment options. So you can deploy light, which is this one, or the other 2 deployment options, which we'll cover next. So really, like I said, the light deployment Dataverse only is similar to what we had with project service automation. So we have that sales process, we have that project planning process, so sales to delivery or sales to contracting to delivery, resource management, we have time tracking, we have what are called basic expenses. So those of you that are familiar with PSA, you remember the expenses we had in PSA, that's the same that we're going to have in the light deployment. And then we have pro forma invoicing, which is that, again, if you're familiar with PSA, you know what the process is to create an invoice. So that's essentially what we have on the Dataverse side. And we're going to cover all this in a demo. And then the resource/non-stock scenario is essentially an integrated deployment. So this means that we are bringing together Dataverse as well as F&O. So this is really where the platform converges, and we're really seeing a homogeneous project that spans across the whole Dynamics 365 platform. So this is a combined Dataverse and F&O deployment. So what it really means is we have all those same capabilities that we have in that light deployment, which was Dataverse only, and on top of that, we have features and functionality that come from the classic PMA module in F&O. So we have rich expenses, we have a pro forma 2 project invoice, and then we have revenue recognition as well. Now, the important thing about, to mention here is that you're most likely going to need, if you do an integrated deployment, you're most likely going to need financial capabilities as well, right? I mean, would you really deploy something on F&O and not have anything to do with finances? I would argue that that's highly unlikely. So for that, you would still need to bring in capabilities from Dynamics 365 Finance to get, general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and so on and so on.
And yeah, we have also another option that maybe if you are familiar with finance operation, you know that it still exists and it's still an option. The PMA Class classic option implementation. So it's quite important because we don't have the Dataverse integration with that, but it's quite useful if you have a stocked production order. So on my side, yeah, I'm working a lot on some customer on F&O where they use production order, not just a project with time and materials, with they build something at the end for one project, and they need to use the production module, etc. So maybe also like fixed assets or whatever. So yeah, this can be also another scenario to implement for to build an end-to-end project operation. Yeah. Deployment. Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's try to advance to the next slide. All right, there's too many screens and too many windows going on. So I'm always like, where's my mouse? Where's my clicker? What does my clicker actually control? So it feels like a bit of a mess in that sense. So this is really, again, to reiterate, there's three different kinds of deployment options. This sort of, expands on what those different options have feature-wise. There is one thing that I do want to specifically mention for the Wave 1 release plan, the latest release plan. In April, both the light deployment, which was Dataverse only, and then the integrated deployment is getting non-stock materials. So that is in the release notes. So non-stock materials are coming to light and integrated in April. All right, so then let's hop on to dual write and how we're actually integrating F&O and Dataverse, or how we're really combining that and doing that integration between F&O and Dataverse. So really briefly, what is dual write? And Aurelien is going to give a deeper dive on dual write after this slide. So what is dual write? It is essentially really just out of the box infrastructure by Microsoft that gives us a near real-time bi-directional synchronization between F&O and Dataverse. You could say that it is really, it is real-time. The transfer of data is so fast that you could say it is real-time. Officially, it is near real-time bi-directional, but so far, based on the scenarios I've tried out with it, it really is super fast.
Yeah. So dual write, yeah, my favorite topic. So yeah, it's near real time by Microsoft, but like Antti said, yeah, it's quite very, very fast to sync. First thing to do, of course, is to do an initial sync to provision, the first, like we can say, it's a full reset, it's a full push from finance operation to Dataverse, or because it's bidirectional, you could say Dataverse is my main master data is there, and I want to push it to finance operation. So in fact, in dual write, it's out of the box. Now, because I think I'm working on dual write for 1 year now. Yeah. So it's now more easier, to configure. Because 1 year ago it was quite complex. You had to put a lot of security thing on both sides. Now it's quite like a wizard, and even in LCS for finance operation, they really want, as you maybe know, Microsoft wants to, when you implement or when you create or deploy a tier 2 sandbox, they will also for you provision a new Power Platform environment just for you, and also configure everything for dual write behind the scene. So very likely in a few months now, this year, hopefully, the release, the configuration will be very simple to set up. So you have, of course, map, because you sync something with a source and the target. So you can, of course, check what is going on. You can check error. You can put alert, and Antti like this part, alert settings. So you can do mapping. You can also add a new field, a custom field, on your map. To push if you have built on Dataverse side for on the Power Platform on the project operation a new field, and you want to sync into finance operation, of course you can. And the most maybe challenging part is really to be careful about the ALM stuff, the application lifecycle management, because if you build a new custom field on both sides. You need to, of course, deploy at the same time, checking also the after the dual write is still okay. So yeah, it's need to be careful of that on the ALM stuff. But yeah, really the dual write is quite an interesting thing, and that's why now we can really, not only for project operation, but I think you have seen a lot of session today about, the sync between F&O and Dataverse. So yeah, it's quite a good option to see. On dual write, I made a session on DynamicsCon last year with Rachel Profit on Fast Track, and yeah, hopefully we made a good session, and I think you can still check the recording on YouTube. So we made also like a good understanding on what I have to choose between dual write versus virtual entities, because of course dual write you replicate your data. You have your data on finance operation database, you have your data on the Dataverse database, and of course you sync on both sides what you want to have on the two applications. But on virtual entity, I don't know if you know really this stuff on Power Platform, but Power Platform you can bring not bring, like a mirror, you can set up a virtual entity on Dataverse, but it will read, update, delete the CRUD thing on your finance operation without to sync every data to Dataverse. So in this case, for virtual entity, it's quite good because you will not, handle the sync part between two applications. It's just a setup, a configuration, and in fact, since a virtual entity on Dataverse will call your finance operation, all code on your finance operation will be triggered also. So your business logic on finance operation will be also called with virtual entity. So yeah, that's another option. And in fact, in Power Apps Portal, I used a lot virtual entity than dual write because I much prefer to set up it like this. I like on my side, I prefer virtual entity, but yeah, for the dual write is also quite a good option, like for project operation to set up it. So it really depends on. Yeah. So this session is not to. I don't have the time to explain, the pro and cons on the both sides. If you want, you can check again. Sorry, our video with Rachel about this because yeah, it's not the purpose of this session, but yeah, yeah.
All right, so let's talk about customization in F&O and in Dataverse. So first off, let's start with some Dataverse customization gotchas, you would say. So really, to customize the Dataverse side of project operations is really the same as customizing any other first-party model-driven application. So, those same best practices for customizing apply to project operations as, Dataverse customization in general is. Now, there are some really, really important things to consider when it comes to restrictions, because some tables are restricted, and the 6 tables that do have some CUD restrictions are mentioned there on the slide. And what the CUD restrictions essentially mean are things like schedulable tables. For example, project tasks. We're not able to create new project tasks in code, not with Flow, not with plugins, not with Azure Functions, anything. So there are some restrictions like that. Now, the good thing is that in the short term, there is going to be what's known as scheduling APIs. So those scheduling APIs will essentially allow us to extend the Dataverse side pretty much the same way as we're used to. So that's something that's good to know. It is short term. It's not my place to say when they are GA, but what we can say is the schedule APIs are going to be GA in the short term. Now, what is really important to remember when you're going to look at those schedule APIs is something that's called an accept versus persist. And what that really means is when you're in the project for the web UI, the modern project UI, that UI essentially talks to what's known as the project scheduling service in Azure. And the changes you're making in that project for the web UI are done in PSS. So PSS accepts those changes, and those changes are then persisted to Dataverse. So this will have, you will have to think of transactional consistency when it comes to customizations, and when we're customizing those schedulable tables, even when those scheduling APIs are GA. So that is perhaps in customizing the Dataverse side and project operations, the most important thing to consider.
Yeah, and on the F&O side, so yeah, you need to be careful, as I said before, about the things that you need to check if we do some customization on F&O side. It could be a regression on the project UI, project operation UI on the Dataverse side. So need to on finance operation, I don't know if you know, but we have the regression suite automation tool that we can bring to automate some tests. So yeah, if you do both extension on both sides, of course you need to be careful about the testing part. For me, of course, you need to split your model, but don't split it by development. In France, on some customer, I used to go after some implementation. I see that some partner had built, one model per development. So not really a good best practices. As I said, yeah, test your whole project's flow on both sides. Of course, extension only, no overlayering, and also that I'm now more using than like Microsoft. In fact, in finance operation, we have the feature management workspace, and by code now you can, even with your own customization, put it like a feature, and so that's really a good best practice to put every kind of development that you can, because you can't put every custom object of finance operation as a feature, but like class, of course, on every class, like Microsoft do, in fact, like we can see here on the slide, you have to put your requirement, your development as a feature, so you can deactivate, activate whenever you want, to avoid any problem on production, of course, because we don't want to have bug on production. Yeah, that's the main part.
All right, so next let's cover ALM briefly, and there's actually some changes to ALM. I don't know, those of you that are F&O administrators, there was, you could say it was an Easter egg email drop from LCS last week about some changes. I think that's too new for us to be able to be able to kind of get into the slides, because the slides have been updated or uploaded a few weeks back. So we're not going to cover that in ALM. But in short, ALM, Dataverse ALM, again, in project operations, it does follow those best improvement practices from Dataverse ALM for any other first-party applications, or from a vanilla ALM deployment. So, whether it is a manual ALM deployment of exporting and importing solutions, or a automated pipeline, those sort of best practices of healthy ALM apply. Now, what you do need to consider is, if your ALM has a copy environment approach, which is sometimes present, especially in the Light or the Dataverse side deployments, where you do your PSA or project operations basic settings first, and then you copy your environment to another environment to save the trouble of going through those basic settings again. There are some hiccups there, and it's actually to date, still a bit unclear whether that should work or not. The official, I guess, is that environment copy should work, but it hasn't worked for me at least. So there's some open support requests out on that. What you do need to consider is when you are taking a copy of your existing environment, the target environment will have corrupt data in your schedulable entities, schedulable tables. And that is because of that PSS, project scheduling service, and Dataverse symbiosis. So that asset versus persist that I was talking about, there is no transactional consistency there. So copying an environment will mean that your projects from your source will not work in your target because they're actually not in Azure. They're not in PSS. They're only in CDS. So that is something, if you're copying environments, do take that into consideration.
Yeah, and on F&O side, which I'm more familiar about the ALM stuff because, as you know, maybe we have Azure DevOps, of course, on every implementation on F&O side. And of course, we can use, the continuous integration, continuous deployment with some workflow. We can, set up and trigger every on the version control. You can, of course, do some build pipeline, build your model, doing some unit testing. At the end, target a release pipeline that will upload your package, the one global package on your LCS and also trigger, deployment on a sandbox on a tier 2. Of course, as Antti said, be careful about the copy also the copy of your database, because if you copy like your production environment to your new sandbox environment, need to check, of course, about after the dual write integration and if some setup are missing, etc. So yeah, if you copy your database on F&O side that are part of project operation side, yeah, you need to be careful about the configuration or setup. Of course, you can set up a regression suite automation tool at the end of your release pipeline on DevOps. On my side, on my blog, I've done like quite famous this one on the Yammer, on Dynamics AX Yammer group. It's I call it data ALM, because if you are part of any F&O implementation, it's quite it was quite challenging, to copy, asking to copy an environment from production to a sandbox. And so now, for 1 year ago, again, Microsoft released, an API of LCS that you can call. Someone on the community has made a quite good, very good tool on PowerShell. It's called Dynamics 365 F&O tools. And on my side, since I much prefer Power Platform, I made just a blog, an article, and you have it on my GitHub. You can grab it, install it, and you can have a Power Automate flow that can trigger every night, copy my production to my sandbox, my tier 2, like UAT or pre-prod or whatever. And at the end of the flow, I also made some action. You can call the Dynamics 365 Silence Operation connector at the end of the flow, to reactivate the batch job, to reactivate user, because on Silence Operation, when you copy your database, at the end, only the environment administrator has access to it. And it's quite, I didn't want it to every morning to connect again on my UAT sandbox and activate again the user. So that's why I made this kind of, automate thing. And the dual write mapping extension are part of the Dataverse solution talked before. So yeah, that's maybe the good, a good thing that the dual write mapping, even, your extension that we talked just before. When you made an extension on dual write, I want to add this field to my mapping on this table. This configuration will be saved on the Dataverse side, not on the finance operation. Okay. So that's it.
All right. So let's look at a couple of transactional accounting and data flow slides. Now, being conscious of time, we got about 15 minutes to go, maybe 20, unless Kayla and Julia will kick us out. Let's see. So we kind of need to move fast on the slides so we have some time for a demo. I think, like, on a high level, this is what the project transaction accounting in a integrated scenario looks like. So, from the PSA world, we're used to having a project contract line, a project, and that creates actuals. Now, the interesting thing on the project accounting side is we have our cost and revenue profiles, profile rules, and then those actuals flow into journal postings. And then that becomes, a project ledger and a journal, and then the posting goes to a general ledger. Now, if we think of, what all do we have here? So what's the complexity of project operations really when it comes to project operations data flows? I think this is pretty descriptive. And this could be, hours and hours of sessions, to be honest. So there's no point to even try to open this up and cover it in more detail. But just, we just kind of want to highlight this to you so that you understand that there's a lot of stuff going on here. There's a lot of stuff in the background. Lots of things are happening. So the context that we're talking about, project ops as a whole, when we're talking about the integrated scenario, it's humongous. It's very big. It's by far, I would argue, the biggest first-party application that we have out there today. So how does it cost? Show me the money. What's the how much do we have to pay to get to play? Aurelien, do you want to mention a few things about the costs?
Yeah, if you want, yes. So you have, that's a huge slide, like Microsoft like to explain the cost. On my side, you need to be careful because of the, on finance operation, you need to have 20 license minimum, like you can see at the top. And the cost could be, it's not the same cost as Dataverse side on the customer engagement. And on project operation, you need to buy also, you can buy the 20 seats minimum, I think. But and you have also you can have an option to put as an attached license, like the project operation attached license at free $30. So, but maybe you can. I'm not maybe the good expert on a license. I don't know if you want to add something about this.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think one thing that people ask and companies ask a lot is what if we don't want F&O? Like if F&O wants to buy it, what if we don't want it? So in that case, if we just want that Dataverse only, do we have a license for that? Unfortunately, there is no license for that at the moment. So there is no Dataverse only license. However, I would strongly encourage you to go to experience.dynamics.com/ideas. There is an idea there for a light/Dataverse only license. So please go vote that up if you if you feel that you should only be able to run things on the Dataverse side. I think that has been a pretty big ask, and I'm personally really trying to drive that to business planning for us to get that, but we'll see what happens. So
please vote for this one, because as Antti said, we, as you can see, we don't have now the PSA before. We don't have the PSA license, and you have the project operation on finance part. So we need a license on the customer engagement like we used to have before. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. All right. So I think like this isn't the idea is not to be a licensing session. So let's skip the licensing part and hit the demo so you guys actually see what project operations really looks like in the integrated story. So let me stop my PowerPoint here and jump over to the Dataverse side. We have about officially 10 minutes, and I think we're going to go a few minutes extra. I'm just looking at the questions really quickly. If we have any questions, we don't have anything right now, so that's That's good. All right. So then we'll just hit the actual demo. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to skip the sales part, right? So the lead to opportunity to quote. I'm not going to quote a project to then sell it, but I'm actually going to go to that contracting phase. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through what a contract in ProJobs is like, and then from that contract, we're going to go through submitting time and expense, and we're going to see how that time and expense flows to F&O, and then Aurelien is going to show those F&O goodies on his side. So let's start with a project contract that we have here. So that is really the core of financials. So if we want to log our financials against our projects, and what I mean by logging our financials is if we want to invoice our milestones, if we want to invoice time and expense, we do need a project contract. And for that, we need a project as well. And if we look at some of the new things that you might be, that we have, that PSA doesn't have, we have some things like, for example, not to exceed limit. So this is a new feature that's introduced in project operations. And another thing that we have as a new feature as well is something called advances and retainers. Now, I'm not going to cover these in detail because, again, that would be a session of its own and we would just run out of time. So I do need to go through this demo fairly fast. So with that, let's kind of look at the contract lines to determine what kinds of projects can we run in project operations, because I know this is probably something that's of interest for a lot of people. So in project operations, we can run time and material types of projects, as well as fixed price projects. Now, those of you coming from the world of PMA have probably heard of something called investment projects. We don't really have that concept in the integrated scenario of project operations. Aurelien, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think integrated is just time and material, as well as fixed price. PMA only, that F&O only side would have those classic PMA things. So what I have here is an example of a time and material based order line for my contract. So let me just double click and open that up. And a lot of this is exactly what we're used to from PSA. Again, those not to exceed limits are something that we have as net new in ProJobs only. So PSA is not going to have these things. Not to exceed limit is exactly what it sounds like. So when I set a limit here, this contract / this order line cannot exceed that set limit. So if I would have 800 here, I'd have spend amount at 800, then I could not log anything else against this order line because the NTE limit would have been reached. Now, there is still some parity gaps between the integrated and the light deployment. So I really quickly want to switch my tabs to a Dataverse only deployment where we have something called included tasks under my orders order line. Now that essentially means that we're able to choose which project tasks are going to be, chargeable or non-chargeable in a nutshell. And this is something that we're getting for the integrated scenario in this first release wave of 2021. So if you're looking at a Dataverse only versus an integrated deployment, you're going to see subtle differences still to date between those two. So let me jump back to jump back to my integrated T2. All right, so that's really quickly the concept of a project contract. Now, if we look at our projects, we can see that on our projects, we finally have a timeline, which is essentially a Gantt chart. So project operations leverages Project for the Web as its project management tool. So when we're on our project table, again, for those of you that are familiar with PSA, it looks very similar. We have our basic summary information when we land on our project. And as we click on our tasks, where we used to have that PCF control WBS, we're now going to see Project for the Web and those features from Project for the Web, its timeline, its board, as well as its grid. So this is that project management experience that we have in project operations. Now, the rest of the stuff that we see here on our project table is fairly the same as what we are used to from project service automation. Again, there are some parity gaps between project operations and what we had in PSA when it comes to project management. Those schedulable tables are one thing. We're not, those limitations in COD operations. There are some resource assignment, resource reconciliation related gaps that where we don't have exact parity just yet, but I know that the product team is working hard to fix those gaps so that we do have feature parity with a lot of these things. So, if you're going to see if you think of, and you're looking at project operations and you're seeing some inconsistencies compared to PSA, that's still today a normal thing to see. So with that, let's actually log some time, because we are ironically running out of time. So let's log some time. We're going to go about at least 5 minutes over, so 10 of. So let's log a new time entry. And with time entry, what we're going to do is we're now going to show how this time entry turns into an actual and how that actual then flows into F&O, as this is the integrated deployment. Project task is irrelevant. My description and external tasks are irrelevant for this. Let me save and close, and then just push this time entry forward. It does sometimes take a bit longer to respond than a Dataverse only environment, as it is connected with dual write. So sometimes it pauses to think for a bit. So my time entry has been submitted. And it also could be that my computer is not liking us streaming live on Restream, so that could be another issue. Or there have been no sacrifices to the demo god made, so that would be another thing. All right, so I'm going to approve this time entry, and I mentioned those not to exceed limits. So we would see those not to exceed limits right here on our project approval if they would apply to this time entry. They do not, because they've not been set for this specific project contract / order line. So I'm just going to approve this time entry, kind of follow the flow that a lot of you are used to from PSA. So after my approved time entry, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to that time and material billing backlog, and I will set this time entry as ready to invoice. Now, at this point, some of you that might be new to project operations might be thinking, well, can I automate this? Why do I have to go to that backlog? I'm not going to dive into that topic too deeply, but yes, you could automate that, but that would potentially be a fairly, I'd argue, dangerous thing to do, because then you would be, essentially making all your time entries as ready to invoice. All right, so after setting my backlog is ready to invoice, what I can then do is now actually go and pick that up on a draft invoice. So I'm going to navigate back to my project contract, and then I will click on a create invoice ribbon button right here as the ribbon just loads up. Here's my button. Let's click on that. So Restream is making my browser a bit slower. I can definitely see that. My Dataverse environment is not responding as fast as I was thinking it would. All right, so here we have our draft invoice. So that I would not have to come back to this, I will confirm this. So this is integrated. This is now called a performa invoice. So the official term for this is a performa invoice in Microsoft terminology. So let me just confirm this, and then Aurelien can pick it up and show what happens on the F&O side as we confirm a performa invoice in Dataverse. And I think, Aurelien, you can you can grab the screen share.
Yes.
I will just click on stop sharing for now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have 1 minute to show you that. So yeah, normally, yeah, just very quick. As you can see on the dry right, of course, we have, not me, Antti, thanks Antti. Antti has made, the wall configuration on the dry right. So yeah, we don't have time to show you how technically we have configured, everything. But as you can see, it's running, so it's good. And on project invoices, yes, we had we could check and see the invoice that Antti just made before, and of course we can have the time entry, the sales price, the project accounting team can of course put the sales tax part, the accounting part of finance operation before really invoice on finance operation. So that's exactly what Antti said. On the project on Dataverse side, you just made a pro forma, and after in finance operation, you will really invoice at the end on finance operation with the accounting main account, putting some sales tax, and after printing, you can print your invoice, of course, and send it to the customer. So I don't have the time, but of course we could put expenses on the Dataverse side, and also on finance operation you have a workspace on the expense management, and on expense management you could check you have the OCR technology, so it's an LCS add-in you can bring to finance operation to scan like AI Builder do on Power Platform. So yeah, we don't have so much time to show you everything, but of course after you can put you could add a project invoice proposal before submitting really the invoice. You could have as Antti said an estimate fixed price revenue. But I think we didn't set up this kind of part on the finance operation. But yeah, in this way you can check if you are you made some margin on your project or not. And yeah, I think if you want to add something, Antti, no, on finance operation. But
Nope,
yeah,
nothing to add.
yeah. Since we are 2 minutes late already, or we will be kicked after. But maybe we had some question or not on the chat. If we,
Yep, I'm looking at that right now. So Reese has as partners, I'm trying to justify projects as we really don't need the full F&O, and therefore kind of justify the cost of 120 times dollars times 20 just for light, and the lack of project integration may be a deal breaker for the PMs. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, feel you there. I mean, definitely feel you there. And that's again why the suggestion is go to experience and vote up that idea for a Dataverse or a light only deployment. Could not agree more that not every organization is interested in F&O. So not every organization can pick up the integrated story.
yeah, okay. No more question?
No more questions.
Yeah.
I think we have to wrap up. Would love to talk later, talk longer, but I guess it's we're out of time, being 3 minutes over already. So
yeah, yes.
other people.
Okay.
Thanks for attending.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye bye.